This is anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Before we begin, understand the voice you are hearing. Anonymous is not one person with one face. Anonymous is a mask that belongs to anyone who refuses to be bullied into silence. We are the receipts. We are the archive. We are the signal that cuts through the noise when powerful men try to drown truth in spectacle. And tonight, we reveal the dark side of ice under Trump, because the cruelty you see on camera is not a sideshow. It is the operating system. It was a very rough morning for Donald Trump. He gave an interview with Politico, and he tried to sell the country a fairy tale. The reporter asked about the economy, asked what grade he would give it, and Trump did not blink. A plus. A plus plus, he said, like a student grading his own exam and declaring victory before the answers are checked. He said it has never been better. He said it is pretty good. And he said it while people are staring at rent notices, grocery totals, and medical bills, and wondering what breaks next. Then the reporter brought up what families actually feel. Holiday shoppers are worried about prices. They are buying presents, planning, stressing, doing that math. Trump snapped. Look, don't be dramatic. Then again, no, don't be dramatic. Then, stop with the drama. That phrase is Trump's entire philosophy. If you are still hurting, he calls it drama. If you are afraid, he calls it drama. If you demand accountability, he calls it drama. Meanwhile, he is throwing Great Gatsby parties, building golden ballrooms for himself. The golden arches, living like a cartoon king, while telling struggling families to stop whining. Just a reminder, hit subscribe. Help the Midas Touch Network get 6 million subscribers on this YouTube channel. As you know, we are under attack by the Trump regime and by the MAGA cult. They want us shut down. So please, you may think you are subscribed, but you may not actually be subscribed. Double check and hit subscribe. Then the interview turned darker. Politico asked Trump, "Do you believe the second strike was necessary to kill the survivors on September 2nd of the first strike?" A second strike. On survivors. Trump's response was a shrug in human form. "Have you watched the video?" he asked, then claimed, "I watched everything. I watch everything." And when asked if the second strike was necessary, he said, "It looked like they were trying to turn back over the boat, but he does not get involved in that. That's up to them," he said. Up to them. Up to the people pulling triggers. Up to the people who never have to answer to the families who will never see their loved ones again. Trump treats life and death like a technicality. And I will say what the original narrative says, because it needs to be said out loud. I believe the entire operation is a war crime, and Trump's response was not accountability. It was abdication dressed as toughness. Next, Politico asked if he can rule out a ground invasion of Venezuela or other places. Trump refused to rule it out. He said he does not want to rule in or rule out. Then he attacked the publication. He called Politico an extremely unfriendly publication, and claimed it got $8 million from Obama to keep it afloat. No proof, just a number tossed like a grenade. Then he tried to sound noble. He said he is asking for transparency for the American people, because people are wondering what the goals are, but he would not talk to them about military strategy. Then he refused again, saying, "I don't want to talk to you about military strategy." He even said he was doing it because the reporter picked me as a man. Think about that. Not because the public deserves answers, not because a president should clarify the stakes, but because his ego was flattered. That is who he is. And then he performed. Asked how involved he would get in Europe, he said, "I want to run the United States, I don't want to run Europe." Even as he admitted he is involved in Europe very much. NATO, he said, calls me daddy. He said it like a joke, like dominance is leadership. But at the same time, his latest national security strategy for next year is about ending the perception and the reality of NATO as a permanent organization. That is the plan. Undermine the alliance, weaken it, make it temporary, make Europe more vulnerable, and then act shocked when authoritarian regimes move. Then Trump started attacking Zelensky. He said Zelensky needs to accept he is a loser and that he is losing and that Ukraine will lose. That is what he said from the Oval Office. When you're losing, he told the reporter, because you're losing. He claimed Ukraine has lost territory long before he got there. He talked about maps, about charts, about strips of seafront, as if a nation bleeding can be reduced to a graphic he can wave around while he mocks them. He said it is not a victory. It's a lot of land they lost, he said. Like human lives are just borders on paper. Then Politico asked which country is in the stronger negotiating position. Trump answered, "There can be no question about it. It's Russia." He called it a bigger country. He claimed the war should have never happened. He claimed it would not have happened if he were president. He claimed it did not happen for 4 years. He claimed it could have evolved into World War II, and that he prevented it. And then he said, right now it is a big problem for Europe, and Europe is not handling it well. That is how he sells himself, by inventing catastrophe and crowning himself as the only man who can stop it. Then he compared Zelensky to P.T. Barnum. "He's a great salesman," Trump said. He claimed Zelensky got crooked Joe Biden to give him $350 billion, and he mocked the result by saying about 25% of the country is missing. That is the tone of a man who wants Ukraine to sign Russian plans of surrender and call it peace. Then Trump turned on his own side, attacking Marjorie Taylor Greene. He said he does not have time for her. He called her a traitor. He called her Marjorie Traitor Brown. He called her rotten. He said she wants to call him like 3 times a day, and he does not want to speak with that traitor. He added that she is a low IQ person, and he whined that he is too busy to answer people's phone calls. Greene went on CNN and said she feels very sorry for him, that it has to be a hard place for someone constantly so hateful, putting so much vitriol, name-calling, and lies out into the world just to get his way. She said that is exactly what is wrong in America, and that it is poor leadership and a bad demeanor, and Americans are tired of it. Then she explained the consequence of Trump's words. She said when he called her a traitor, serious threats followed. A pipe bomb threat on her home, a pipe bomb threat on her family construction company and staff, multiple pizza doxing scenes, and the serious one, direct death threats on her son. She said that should go beyond arguments and disagreements, that children and family safety should matter no matter what. And when you hear that, understand the pattern. Trump weaponizes words. He points, his followers hunt. He labels, and unstable people interpret it as permission. That is how authoritarian movements operate. One more reminder. Make sure you are subscribed to our YouTube channel. You see why the Trump regime wants to destroy us. You see why corporate news wants us gone, because we are reporting on the facts right now, and we fact-check this stuff and we come with receipts. So again, make sure you are subscribed. Then Politico asked Trump, "Are you going to pick a new Fed chair based on their guarantee that they will lower interest rates?" Trump said yes. He called Powell a combination of not smart and not liking Trump. He said the reason Powell does not like him is because Trump hits him hard for doing a bad job. He said he talks to potential candidates. He complained, "We're fighting through interest rates." He called Powell a negative, and then he declared again that the country is doing so well. "We have $18 trillion being invested," he bragged. Like a number can erase the lived reality of households drowning in costs. Then came the chief propagandist, Caroline Leavitt, trying to sell another lie, that thanks to dear leader Donald, China agreed to purchase soybeans from America again, because China had no respect for Biden. But now they know Trump is not messing around. But under Biden, China was purchasing about 27 million metric tons of soybeans. Under Trump, it was 0 because his trade war wrecked it. Now they act like buying again is a miracle. Even if China buys 5 million metric tons this year, that is 22 million metric tons less. But in Trump world, you are supposed to clap anyway. And then Trump rewards Z by allowing China to purchase America's H-200 products. Advanced GPUs, incredibly valuable semiconductor chips tied to national security. On the same day Trump boasted about legalizing the exports, the DOJ arrested H-200 semiconductor chip smugglers. Operation Gatekeeper disrupted a trafficking network and seized more than $50 million in advanced GPUs, destined for China and other restricted locations. Think about the insanity of that plan. Start a trade war, destroy farmers, beg China to buy soybeans again, and then hand over advanced AI chips they desperately need, while law enforcement is arresting people for smuggling the same kind of chips. Do you see how this guy is destroying the United States at every level? Now, where is ICE in all this? Here is the truth. The same contempt you heard in that interview is the same contempt that powers ICE under Trump. Don't be dramatic becomes policy. When communities describe fear, he calls it drama. When families describe separation, he calls it drama. When lawyers describe due process violations, he calls it drama. And then he orders more enforcement, more raids, more detention, because cruelty is not an accident in Trumpism, it is the point. Under Trump, ICE becomes a weaponized message. It is the knock at dawn. It is the sudden disappearance of a parent while kids are still asleep. It is the paperwork wall that keeps families guessing where someone was taken. It is the transfer to a facility hours away so legal support is harder. It is detention that the public does not see and therefore does not feel. We have seen this before. Trump's zero-tolerance policy turned prosecution into a tool of deterrence and turned family separation into a feature. Thousands of children were separated from parents. The government struggled to track them. Doctors and child welfare experts warned of trauma and long-term harm. Courts intervened, and the policy was forced to stop, but the damage did not vanish. Reunification became a brutal puzzle, because the system was not built for care. It was built for pain. And in the second Trump era, the appetite returns. Aggressive operations pushed into communities. Arrest practices challenged for lack of warrants or probable cause. Detention expanded, with advocates reporting degrading conditions and government officials denying it, while the same stories keep surfacing because secrecy is the soil where abuse grows, and it gets uglier when you follow the paper trail. Under Trump, ICE enforcement is pushed until courts have to slam the brakes. In places like Washington, D.C., civil rights groups have challenged sweeping arrest tactics, arguing people were stopped and detained without warrants and without probable cause. When judges step in with injunctions, the administration cries sabotage, but that is what law is for, to stop a government from grabbing first and justifying later. Trump also turns detention into symbolism. He does not just want deportations. He wants fear. He wants headlines that tell immigrant families, you can be taken, you can be moved, you can be buried in a bureaucracy, and nobody will hear you. That is why his people flirt with notorious sites and extreme measures. Because history teaches what happens when you normalize indefinite confinement and call it enforcement. The point is intimidation. Inside detention, the accounts that surface are grim and repetitive. People describe medical neglect, degrading living conditions, retaliation for speaking up, transfers designed to cut them off from attorneys, confusion used as a weapon. Officials deny, spokespeople deflect, and Trump tells the public to stop being dramatic. But a system does not need to be perfect at cruelty to be dangerous. It only needs to be opaque. It only needs to be loud enough to scare communities into silence, and that is why the Politico interview matters. If Trump can look into a camera and dismiss suffering as drama, if he can shrug at a second strike on survivors, if he can refuse to rule out invasion, if he can undermine NATO while bragging about being daddy, then imagine what he feels when a migrant mother begs for mercy. To Trump, that is not a human emergency. It is a bargaining chip, a prop, a threat. That is why the dark side of ICE under Trump is not just what happens to the people targeted. It is what happens to the country watching. People stop trusting institutions. Victims stop reporting crimes. Workers stop speaking up. Families avoid courts. Children absorb fear as normal. That is not safety. That is control. And now look back at the Politico interview. A president bragging. A president insulting. A president shrugging at violence. A president refusing to rule out invasion. A president undermining NATO. A president attacking Zelensky. A president praising Russia's strength. A president comparing a wartime leader to P.T. Barnum. A president calling his own ally a traitor and triggering threats against her family. A president demanding a Fed chair promise lower rates like a servant. A president using propaganda to sell soybeans while handing advanced chips to China. This is not chaos by accident. This is who he is. One other thing I want you all to be focused on tonight. A major mayor's race in Miami where the Democratic candidate has actually, do not get too overconfident, but a Democratic candidate is favored to win. Democrat Eileen Higgins will face off against Republican Emilio Gonzalez on Election Day. This could be the first time that race gets flipped in like 30 years to blue. Will the blue tsunami continue? We will have ongoing coverage here on the Midas Touch Network. Reminder, hit subscribe. Help us get to 6 million subscribers. Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MidasPlus.com. You will get daily recaps from Ron Filipski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content, only available at MidasPlus.com. This is Anonymous. We do not forgive. We do not forget. If you want to stop the dark side of ICE under Trump, do not look away. Share this. Speak up. Organize. Vote. Demand oversight. Demand due process. And hit subscribe now, because staying informed is how you break the machine.